he got, I think, some doctoral degree at the age of 17 or 16 or something like that, I don't recollect. Now, when he and his parents landed in India, they were arrested in the airport. And they were picked up, they didn't get bail for a few days. It became a big row. I'm not saying that it was probably a false case, but then
For a while, yes.
the way people are handled by the police,
Till I open
the
my
way
account.
elderly parents are arrested and then they are not let out on bail. Maybe father-in-law or mother-in-law is a monster. I'm not for a minute speaking in their defense. Because let me tell you, I mean, as I have been pondering, one thing that becomes very evident is a sacred relationship like marriage, turns into an extremely hostile affair the moment there is any discord, there is any marital discord. And in fact, the slanging match goes down to such abysmal level. I mean, it's simply disgusting. Because you should all accept that the closest relationship that a man or a woman ever shares is with the spouse, because in terms of tenure, it's the longest. It's much more than what we spend with our parents. And especially, we spend the prime of our life with our spouses. So with the result, it's a relationship which is based on trust, faith, and when that is lost, people stoop down to really, really low levels. Now, the primary problem with Section 498A has been an insensitive police, because after all, a domestic issue, you are allowing a state agency to come into and participate in whatever sense. They are insensitive. They are least bit concerned about the feelings, they are least bit concerned about the emotional aspects of the matter. And it is no secret today, because even Soli Surabji's committee's report with regard to reformation of the police forces by having a new police act very clearly admits that in large number of cases the constabulary is insensitive, and it is an open secret. Nobody even has any hesitation in saying that police forces generally are corrupt. So that means the tragedy is where there is a genuine case of dowry harassment, and where the girl or the girl's parents go to the police for the purposes of registering a case, the police refuse to register such cases. And the convictions that have been given ultimately in the dowry harassment cases under Section 498A are dismally poor. In fact, this is a general problem, not just associated with cases of this nature, but then this is a general problem which is associated with the police today. Or for that matter, I need not even talk about police. I mean, you talk about prosecution not just under the penal code and the allied laws, but all the prosecutions and under different enactments. For that matter, the prosecutions under the Income Tax Act, the prosecutions under the Central Excise Act, Customs Act, Gold Control Act, you name it. The eventual culprit being punished by a court is extremely unlikely. So that means a person who intends to complain and approaches the police, the first hurdle to cross is to get the police to register a case and thereafter file a case. Now, the greater difficulty is procuring the witnesses. There's a great deal of difference between a case, a dowry harassment case, and any other prosecution. At least if you're talking about other matters, like for instance, if you're talking about a prosecution under the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, there is a panchnama, somebody has caught hold of the gold or somebody has caught hold of the foreign exchange in somebody's hand. So there is a way of going about gathering the evidence, whereas in dowry harassment case, it is simply, nobody writes a legal notice saying that you pay me so much dowry or I'll leave you. Or nobody sends a notice saying that you pay me so much dowry or I'll beat you. Right? So it's all eventually word of mouth. Now, even more distressing is the fact that members of the legal profession, now this is the reason I said I'm not part of this legal profession which deals with this area, but nevertheless I'm also a lawyer. Now, the members of the legal profession have not done any service in this particular area at all, and they have been guilty along with the police force in letting this particular provision degenerate and making it ineffective. So, in sum, what is happening so far as the dowry harassment cases are concerned, the genuine cases are not registered because the person who is going to be affected has a means of procuring the services of the police, and it only therefore becomes a tool for abusing. Now, in fact, when this 2005 law, I'll come a little more in detail on this particular law in a while. When this 2005 law was being discussed in the parliament, a lot of opposition came from the residents of United States because, you see, I mean, marriages, especially with that in the recent times, we have seen that some of the marriages with professionals who have settled abroad have gone on the rocks, primarily because people who are employed there, people who are studying there, people who have been living there, because of compulsions from the family, parents, they end up marrying someone here. Many a times they already have a live-in relationship, or many a times people are even married back in US. Now, for a person in India to get relief in such cases is an extremely difficult proposition. So the moment such a person approaches a lawyer, the lawyer says, let's file a case at the 498. So it obviously is a foisted case, and the lawyer facilitates this process. So residents of US, as I said, had opposed this domestic violence, that is Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act bill at that particular stage. This act, which was introduced in 2005, if you look at it, one thing that becomes evident is that it's almost very, very difficult to implement it. The reason is primarily this. Firstly, you are relying upon the very same state agencies which are charged with investigation of offences and also the prosecution and conviction of the offenders. Namely, you are going back to the same police and you are going back to the same magistrate's court. The difficulties which abound the criminal justice system are numerous. You would be shocked, for instance, that in Andhra Pradesh, as many as 500 or 600 public prosecutors' posts in the courts are not filled up. For how many years? For 10 years. For 10 years, these posts have remained vacant. So, with the result, without the prosecutor, the court doesn't function. And who appoints the prosecutors? The prosecutors are appointed by the government. And the government doesn't appoint them. And the blame goes to the judicial system for not disposing of cases. So the problem starts there. Then the magistracy is more involved with so many other types of cases. If those of you who have had an experience of ever going to a criminal court and watching, I'm not talking about watching it on one of the evening serials, but in real life, it's not something which would impress any of us at all. Basically, because there are drug offenders, there are murder accused, there are rape accused, all kinds of matters. So, for a woman to make a complaint and say that I have been harassed, I have been beaten, or I have been abused, and to go and present evidence in courts of that nature, that itself is a lot of come down. Then the seriousness with which the court views these matters also is considerably diluted, because a judge is more keen on disposing of, let us say, a murder case or a rape case which is got, rather than some woman coming and complaining that I have been battered and I have got bruises in my body. So, one, there is total apathy in the police, and secondly, the court also is overburdened with other types of cases, and these types of cases may not even get importance there. Secondly, this act, this domestic protection of women from the Domestic Violence Act 2005, that's the only time I'm going to tell you the title. I'll simply call it the 2005 Act hereafter. This 2005 Act also involves other state agencies, and this is the best way of making something not workable. Because wherever you have an interface between two agencies, two government agencies, you can be certain that nothing is going to happen, because the advantage of having two agencies is that they can share the blame, or they can, in the alternative, point the accusing finger to the other agency. The government of Andhra Pradesh has appointed protection officers under this act after exactly 1.5 years from the date on which the act was brought into force. So, the protection officer is supposed to be a person from the Child and Women Welfare Department. Now, just as in a regular criminal case, there is a FIR, the First Information Report. Now, here you file a DIR, the Domestic Incidents Report. And this is supposed to be filed before the protection officer. And the protection officer in turn is supposed to report it to the police, and the police in turn is supposed to file a case against the offender in the court. So you can just imagine, with so many agencies being involved in implementing this statute, what the outcome of such reports will be. Then, ultimately, if you look at the act, it is simply just one more act which has been brought into force, which of course contains well-meaning intentions, but there is absolutely no seriousness as far as I can see in wanting to implement this act. As a matter of fact, I don't think any court has taken cognizance of any offences under this particular act until this point of time, although this came into force with effect from 2005. The powers which are conferred on the magistrates are in fact quite wide-ranging. Typically, as we know, that we have civil cases and criminal cases. All of us know that much. And in civil cases, there will be compensation for wrongdoing. a victim of a domestic violence has two rights. First of all, there is a civil right, there is a civil wrong in that the person has been injured or the person has been hurt. So there is a certain amount of monetary compensation which the person can be given for the injury, for the suffering, for hospitalization, etc. And then there is a criminal angle to it, in that the offender is punished, convicted by the court. The Act says that this is not in derogation of, and this is in addition to all the existing laws. If you look at the provisions for the payment of compensation, the way the Act is drafted, the report is supposed to go within a period of 3 days, and the case is supposed to be finished within a very short period of time. I don't recollect how many days. Now, the government takes so many days to appoint a protection officer. In reality, whether some report will go within 3 days or not, and whether the court will react that fast and award compensation or not, it is anybody's guess. And as our experience shows, in all likelihood, it will not happen that way. Because when they brought in Consumer Protection Act way back in 1986, they thought that they were providing a quick mechanism for consumers to redress their grievances, and they said that all consumer cases have to be disposed of within a period of 6 months. And in reality, we know that nothing gets disposed of for 2 or 2.5 years, and thereafter you have the same usual tiers of appeal, etc. So therefore, how the speed with which these issues have to be addressed, the speed with which the situation has to be remedied, it is very unlikely that it will be achieved by a mere enactment of this. Am I suggesting that there ought to have been an alternate forum? Maybe. Maybe there ought to have been more thinking on this. Am I suggesting that should there be mechanism outside the regular police and magistrate? Probably yes. I mean, that's my view. Because as of today, I mean, none of us can do anything about it. But primarily, all that I'm trying to tell you is a mechanism which this statute creates within the existing setup, and with the same agencies plus few additional agencies getting involved in this, it's very unlikely that there will be any speedy redressal of the matters here. And one more thing which has now become fashionable for our parliament to do is that you are simply creating parallel fora for remedy. The Act itself says that this is in addition to the existing right that you have for filing a criminal case under the Indian Penal Code. This is in addition to your right to claim maintenance under the Criminal Procedure Code. This is in addition to your right to claim maintenance from the Family Court, and this is your right in addition to your right to claim maintenance by way of a regular suit. Why are we having so many different fora? And one more thing it says is, if you are awarded any compensation under this Act, then this will be set off if the civil court awards a larger compensation. So, A, you are using an existing setup. B, you are defining a new set of procedures. Then C, you are involving a third agency. And 4, you are not removing the other remedies which were already available. So, accepting being an expression of good intention, I think it doesn't serve any purpose. Let's just look at the definition of domestic violence, because some parts of it have come into criticism. So I'll not read about those parts where health or safety is endangered, or where somebody breaks a leg or somebody breaks a hand or not. Now, what has been criticized is with respect to this definition of sexual abuse. See, Section 3 defines a domestic violence. It contains 4 clauses. And for the purposes of this section, there is a definition of sexual abuse. It says it includes any conduct of sexual nature that abuses, humiliates, degrades, or otherwise violates the dignity of woman. Now, the criticism insofar as this particular provision, especially Mr. Soli Sorabji and Renuka Chaudhary, the minister who piloted this bill, they had a slanging match which all got reported. Mr. Sorabji's point was, if I call my wife or girlfriend, hey fatso, I mean, should I go to jail for that? Have I committed an offense? Because if you take the words in the strictest sense, abuses, humiliates, degrades, or otherwise violates the dignity of woman, probably is right. It would be an offense. You are asking a policeman to step into and investigate whether what I have told a woman lowers her dignity. Now, I basically what I'm trying to do is to contrast and show that how it will not have the intended effect, namely the people whom the Act wanted to protect, the people to whom the Act wanted to give succor. They are not the people who are going to benefit by this statute, but the people who will benefit by this statute, just like section 498A of the Penal Code, is the people who want to abuse these provisions. Now, the point is, if casual observations, if statements made by a spouse can be misread, misunderstood, then there is every chance of a false case being foisted. So therefore, just like section 498A, this becomes one more sore point for the purposes of harassing an individual rather than achieving the real intended purpose. I'll just give you a couple of examples of what I have watched in the court. As I told you, I don't do these cases, but what I have watched in the court, I'll tell you. Now, there was one case in which a boy eloped with a girl, and according to him, they both got married. The boy has photographs of their marriage, and he also says that the girl is an adult. He has got a doctor's certificate to say that the girl is an adult. The girl's parents obviously don't like the marriage. The girl has a mama or some close relative who is in the police department, and they file a case of rape against the boy. Now, when they file the case of rape against the boy, the police, instead of picking up this boy and arresting him, what they do is they call the boy's parents to the police station every day. And there is no case registered against the parents, but the parents are asked to come to the police station at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they are made to sit in the police station till 5 o'clock in the police station. Then finally, the boy decides that his parents are being persecuted, and therefore he says, all right, you take me in. I am surrendering. I mean, if I have committed the offense, I am surrendering, you take me in. They take him in, but they do not produce him before the magistrate. All because that there is a relative of the girl's side who is there in the police department and who is able to handle this situation. Then finally, when the boy is illegally detained by the police, the parents file what is called as a habeas corpus petition. That is a petition to produce the boy, and the case comes up in the High Court. And when the High Court interviewed the boy and girl, they say that yes, they were married and there was no question of any rape. So the police agency can go to any extent in manipulating cases of this nature. in another case which I came across recently, a boy and girl got married about a year back, a little longer maybe. Now, the boy apparently has some health problems. The advice that the girl's parent get is to get a quick divorce, to file a dowry harassment case. See the kind of predicament that the parents are put in. Now, many a times they are forced to do wrong things. They are forced to file false cases. So, ultimately, for whose benefit are these laws? This is the question that we need to really find out. If you go back and analyze as to why the marriage was, I do not know whether we can say that the marriage was a little more successful earlier on, and it is more in trouble today. There are a variety of reasons. First of all, most importantly, it is no longer considered as a stigma to be divorced. It is no longer considered a stigma to be separated. So therefore, people are finding ruse, people are finding these methodologies for the purposes of getting separated. Secondly, women also, most women these days work. So with the result, the sustaining interest in the marriage itself might be on the decline, because it is no longer an institution on which the couple depend for their emotional sustenance, for companionship. So people have more avenues. There are different ways of spending time, different ways of entertaining oneself, and different ways of finding solace in other areas. So, because of these reasons, the divorce rate in India has gone up. Again, I mean, we do not have accurate statistics as to what is the percentage of marriages which end up in divorce, but then it's generally accepted that the divorce rate has gone up. So the institution of marriage is in threat. We are slowly drifting on this particular aspect. We are slowly drifting towards the Western societies. And because of this, we have all these associated problems. I am not a voter for abolishing these laws. I am not saying that these laws are bad. I am not saying that the legislation ought not to have been made. The point that I am trying to make is only this, that the intended objective of these laws is not likely to be achieved, and it probably only leads to more complication. That's all I have to say by myself. I mean, I invite questions from you. I mean, those of you who may have a different point of view can come and certainly share that.
Excuse me. Can I take a question?
Yeah.
There's a mention in the Act which is I need to study. Is that something, even if the spouse doesn't have a property, is assumed to have a property?
That's right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. You see, first of all, this Act does not make a distinction between a married couple and an unmarried couple living together, and also it does not make a distinction between a brother and sister insofar as the protection against violence is concerned. Now, one of the things that happens to a woman when she is subjected to domestic violence is that she is likely to be thrown out of the house. So, the law says that she is entitled to remain in her home, whether it is the matrimonial home or otherwise. As a matter of fact, when it defines the respondent, it does not necessarily speak only about the husband, this is the domestic relationship. This is how it is defined. It says when they are related by consanguinity, that is, I mean, they could be brother and sister, marriage, or through a relationship in the nature of marriage. So that means irrespective of what the relationship between the man and woman is. For instance, if a girl is staying unmarried, let us say, with her parents or with her brother, and she has traditionally stayed there. If the brother or brother's wife decides to kick her out and abuses or tries to get her out of the house, then also she can make an application and she has a right to continue in that house. So, and it further says that irrespective of whether it is a own house or a rented house in which the respondent, as per the definition, an applicant, that is the aggrieved person, can only be a woman or a child of the woman. And the respondent can be anybody. The respondent can be mother-in-law, father-in-law, mothers, brothers, sister, husband, anybody. So then she can get an order of protection from the magistrate, whereby she will be allowed to stay in that home.
It assigns the property ownership.
No, it doesn't give her property ownership. It gives her a right of residence. It gives her a right of residence in the matrimonial home or in the parental home.
Ravi, is this just a new law giving the same remedies and the same rights, or does this define new rights and new remedies for the battered, for the?
You see, if you look at the definition of domestic violence here, all this is actionable under the Indian Penal Code.
Right, but what about the rights and the remedies? Are they the same?
No, I mean remedies are different. In fact, that's what I was telling you. It gives you an additional remedy under this act. Now, for instance, if a person harms, injures, endangers the health, safety, life, limb, it could be anybody. I mean, it could not be between a husband and wife. It could not be between a brother and a sister. Any ex beating up any Y, whereby, for instance, our Navjot Singh Sidhu. I mean, there is no relationship, but nevertheless, he is also liable under the Indian Penal Code, and this act did not exist then.
So, but if that other person were a lady, then this act would have come into operation. No, because it's still not domestic.
No. I mean, no. They should share a domestic relationship.
They should share a domestic.
The domestic relationship they should share should be by virtue of marriage, consanguinity, or a relationship in the nature of marriage. Now, a woman cannot file a case against a stranger saying that I am subjected to domestic violence. There are some clauses in this which create a new offense. For instance, I was talking about this sexual abuse, because this says includes any conduct of sexual nature that abuses, humiliates, degrades, or otherwise violates the dignity of a woman. This is extremely broad and capable of a lot of subjectivity.
The dignity of the woman is to be derived from the specific issue of a sexual abuse. It's not a general dignity. If you read that again, you cannot say that calling someone a fatso would fall under that clause. It would not.
No, why? I mean,
you read it again.
Or otherwise,
No.
I mean, you are trying to apply the rule of, sorry for this legal jargon, you are trying to apply the rule of ejus dem generis. Ejus dem generis will not apply here because there is a disjunctive R. Okay, and what it actually means is that if your act lowers the dignity of the woman in any way, well, okay, I mean, Soli took an extreme example for illustrating the point, but the point that he was trying to make basically on this was that there is so much of latitude in interpreting these expressions, and first of all, these expressions have got to be interpreted in the first instance by a protection officer, then who is a person from the Child and Women Welfare Department, and thereafter it has got to be interpreted by a police, and thereafter by the magistrate. Now, what an amount of subjectivity can be infused into interpreting this expression? This is what he was trying to say. Now, the criticism of the,
Are there new remedies, or is it?
Yes. I mean, that's what I was telling you. There are new remedies because the lady who has been the victim of domestic violence, she can get compensation, she can get a protection order, she can get an injunction saying that she will not be thrown out of that home. Then she can also get a protection saying that nobody shall abuse her, although how we are going to enforce it is a matter of grave doubt. You see, I mean, the old adage that you can take a horse to water, but you can't take the horse, you can't make the horse drink water. How you will implement some of this? I mean, the there can't be a policeman sitting around the woman saying that, okay, you're not going to come within a distance of 10 yards or 20 yards to this particular day. So implementation is going to be very difficult. That's the reason why I said that this is an expression of good intention. This is an expression of the fact that we as Indian citizens, we as people of this nation, do believe that women ought not to be abused, women ought to be protected. Beyond that, how far this is going to be useful? She had the question first.
I think in a very simple manner that I want to ask is a recognition of domestic violence.
That's
And that's not it. That's a very important thing. Yes, you have said police are like this, the act doesn't do this, the remedy doesn't do this, the right doesn't do. Everything comes everywhere else. But this is such a major factor that you have recognized that there is violence and that is domestic violence. You can just question that this is domestic violence only for women and not for men. But that it exists itself is such a hope. You can't be cynical that, the police are like, of course the police are like that. The law is like this, that's fine.
It was always never like that.
There is hope that there is law and that there is a recognition of this.
if you remember, I made my point very clear that I'm not a votary saying that this is an act which is ill-conceived or enacted with any bad intentions. I am all for it. That's the reason why I made my stand very clear. I am totally in agreement with you. I am totally in agreement with you that at last we, the citizens of this country, have recognized, we have admitted that women are subjected to domestic violence and that they do require protection. Now, I am only saying that this is not all. We need to do something more, that is, in terms of being able to provide real relief to the people.
No, can I just finish you? Now, is this sort of a domestic violence exclusive only to India?
No.
Or to South Asia? If it is there in other countries, then what have they done and what is the judicial remedy by which this has been sorted out? Leaving out alternative resolution mechanisms.
See, one problem that we have had in India is the tort law has not developed well. What is tort? Tort basically means that if somebody commits a civil wrong, then the person is entitled for compensation. What we hear about the Americans suing for damages, we hear about somebody drinking hot cup of coffee in McDonald's and burning the lips and the court awarding X dollars as compensation, and some lady falling in a grocery store, breaking her ankle and not being told that there is wet flow, she gets compensation. So this is tort law. I mean, you know law, but I've got to tell this to others also, some of the French who may not be familiar with it. Now, this tort law is almost non-existent in India, and the courts are extremely loath to award any compensation, give any monetary compensation in these matters. Now, typically in a country like US, if there is any such physical abuse, and if the woman can establish that there is physical abuse, ultimately it's always a matter of evidence and proof. Whether it is under the 2005 Act or under the Indian Penal Code, it will be incumbent on the prosecution to establish that she has suffered or that she has been a victim of domestic violence, and there has to be evidence before the court. Now, on the basis of the evidence before the court, she can always get compensation for whatever suffering she has done. And as I was telling you, the offences which this section speaks of, for instance, bodily injury, endangering the health or safety of the woman, or causing physical harm, all these are actionable under the penal code. All these are actionable under the common civil laws, common criminal laws of the country. You can say that it is at best a collection of the various ways in which a woman could be abused, or the various ways in which a woman could be troubled, and enumeration of all this at one place. So all this was actionable minus this act also, prior to this act came into force.
That is why they brought this.
Will they be able to do it because
No.
of this law is the
That
question.
is another question.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do it
But-
earlier, and that is the reason why it
No, because if a woman complained earlier, see, let me again reiterate my stand. It is definitely an eye-opener in the sense that we recognize that this problem is extremely acute and it requires remedial measures. Correct? So this is an expression of intention. That's all I'm trying to say.
Why can't it have been eliminated this protection officer and allowed women directly to go to the magistrate to register the complaint? Is it too onerous on him?
No, I mean I think actually, you know, the problem in India has never been with the laws. I think many of barring the draftman's slips here and there.
Can you have a separate court for this? I mean, is that an answer where a more sensitive, something like a fast track court or women's court, where it's a more personalized kind
Yeah,
of process?
I will.
I like what Dr. Gita Gauri said. Could there be a mechanism of, arbitration that you could probably
Yeah,
fit
like
into?
divorce.
But I just
Only
want
if
to
Justice
say-
T.N.C. Nagarajan is an arbitrator.
Ravi, I just want to.
I tell you, I mean, you know,
want
all this comes to one
what you're
point.
saying, what you said about the normal law and that you go into it. And I'll tell you what the standard reaction will be. That's a matter between husband and wife. Oh, ghar ka mamla hai. You know, this is where this domestic violence has come in. You know, you have to distinguish. These are areas of grey areas, which is not black and white, and that is why I feel that the earlier law, yes, you're beaten up, that's fine. I know many cases of torture, beaten up. Not people. We always think it happens at the lower income people. I know very people coming from elite families going through it.
It happens in educated families. I mean, let us not have any illusion that this sort of beating goes on only in uneducated and in the lower echelons. It happens in educated families and it happens everywhere.
Vikram can tell you of a phone call he received today.
he did. Vikram will narrate it. Vikram will certainly narrate it.
But before we get on, you said
No,
whether there was in other countries there was any. Are you aware of anything?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I
fine.
want
Does
you to tell me.
do other countries have something which was gender specific? Or Indian or
No,
something?
against.
That I will be.
No,
In USA there is.
no. I mean, I need to answer two questions. One is Vikram's question. I'll answer that. Whether the law is gender specific in other countries. The other question is, generally discussing about what are the alternative mechanisms. Now, if we do not want the police to investigate, if we do not want the regular criminal courts to go about it, what real alternatives exist? Oh, incidentally, but I just forgot to tell you, there is also a provision for appointing counsellors under this act. That is, the NGOs can be appointed as counsellors. And again, it's not very clear as to what circumstances the magistrate can ask them to go for counselling. Now, normally marriage counselling should take place, you don't require an act for it. There ought to be more sociologists, more marriage counsellors who will intervene and sort out matters. Because many of these things comes to a pass primarily because of ego clashes, primarily because of, I'm not talking about the true domestic violence now, I'm talking about the cases of abuse of these provisions, which can be resolved in an amicable fashion. The Act also envisages that, but again, the mechanism which has been thought out is extremely sketchy, and it doesn't. Most probably no magistrate would say go to the counsellor for this or go to the counsellor for that. Now, the problem, insofar as the forum is concerned, I say there is nothing wrong with the magistrates' court. There is nothing wrong with the existing court system. What is wrong with our country is primarily with the people who man it. And I get this question being asked by people. I believe judges are corrupt. My answer is very simple. Aren't bureaucrats corrupt? Aren't businessmen corrupt? Aren't professionals corrupt? Aren't parliamentarians corrupt? Now, where do you expect the judges to come from? Right from heaven. It is the same common stock that we have. So therefore, ultimately, if you just analyze all these problems, it is basically a problem with people. If you talked about arbitration, can we have an arbitration in matters like this? Yes, provided the arbitrator is good. Provided that the arbitrator has an inclination to decide matters in a quick fashion, without much of adjournments and in a short period of time. So, the point is, irrespective of what forum you create, it will face the same criticism. Whether you create a separate court, for instance, for all family disputes, there are family courts, there is a family court act, family court is constituted. As a matter of fact, the trend in the recent times has been multiplication of fora. For everything they are creating a tribunal, for everything they are creating a separate court. It is not serving the purpose. It is not serving the purpose. So the answer is that we need better people to man all these institutions. We need better sensitization, and people should be more responsible and responsive for all these problems, and people should sort out these problems. In how does that happen? How can it happen in the society in general today? What you require is an upliftment of the whole society. How does it happen just in this one area? It has to happen in every walk of life.
I have two questions, Ravi.
Mr. Modi,
This
Mr. Modi,
definitely doesn't cover an employer-employee relationship, that is a man abusing.
No. This doesn't cover. But yeah, this is not no Demi Moore, Michael Douglas movie here. No disclosure.
No, domestic violence that he physically abuses the servant in the house.
No, servant could. You see, technically, if the servant is living in the same house, actually, no. Sorry. Household, marriage, consanguinity, relationship, no.
That's unfair because there are large number of female employees who are inside houses.
They can
violence.
yeah. Under the Indian Penal Code, their rights are protected. In fact, they can file cases in the regular court for
Minor children,
minor children. You have the new act. They can't be employed.
not employed.
Yeah.
When a father abuses his daughter, can a daughter be minor daughter? Can she be a complainant?
She can't be a complainant. The woman has to be a complainant on her behalf. As a minor, she would never be able to go and complain, isn't it?
So that's
But you see, for instance, if father abuses, let us say a father molests a minor girl, mother can make a complaint under this. It comes under domestic violence because the girl child is sharing the man's house, not by.
And if she is motherless, she's And if she is motherless?
You see, unfortunately, the way it doesn't provide for.
this act doesn't provide for that protection. That's what he said.
You see, the way it has been aggrieved person. This is how the aggrieved person is defined. Means any woman who is or has been in a domestic relationship. Now, the moment you say domestic relationship,
Doctor is not there. Only brother is there.
No. One second.
What's a domestic relationship?
Let me complete reading it. Means any woman who is or has been in a domestic relationship with the respondent, or who alleges to have been subjected to any domestic violence by the respondent. So, that domestic relationship becomes essential, and she can also make complaint in respect of the child. That's also provided.
What happens to BB number 2 in that case?
She is no different from BB number 1. If you abuse her, you face the same music.
No, but basically that relationship is not legally recognized.
No.
Relation
That's
in
a-
the marriage.
Yeah, in the nature of marriage.
In the nature of marriage. So that is included.
It is definitely recognized. And just live-in partners also can make complaints under this.
Sir, my take on this is that it does serve a purpose. For example, don't take an extreme case. Take a husband who is prone to violence but has not reached the level of violence, which does not act as a deterrent.
Exactly.
This act.
This is a similar, we have just experienced where, like the madam said, it has done a great impact in handling the mind game.
Yes.
It has done a wonderful law. I give respect to the devil's lawyer. You interpret so much, but the generally social impact I'm saying is that it has made them vary. You can't assume. It is appreciable initiative, whether it was there, instead of going into the semantics, whether the law will fail, and the courts have always been like that and
It's the
will
first
be.
step.
But before that thing, before you beginning, it has at least contained it. We have experienced.
That we can't say. I agree with all your statements 100%, except your last statement that it has contained it. That we don't know.
Maybe before precipitation.
See,
Ravi, I want to add. Subject to that, but it doesn't reach that level. Some level higher level, IT field. IT field.
No,
Can we all listen to Justice Rangarajan?
In the
Please.
IT field, for instance. And one more thing, sir, about this
Please, I mean, please.
in the IT field, they generally say they got some psychological problems. And the husband who is prone to violence, he is not willing to come for counseling. This act will enable him to compel him to come for counseling and medication. The real problem is not that complaining against that person and punishing him. The problem is trying to continue the relationship harmlessly.
I don't think that is the intention of the
and
act, sir.
send the husband to jail. What's the use of that?
No, 1 second. See, this is what the counseling section provides. The magistrate may, at any stage of the proceedings, direct the respondent or the aggrieved person, either singly or jointly, to undergo counseling with any member of a service provider who possesses such qualifications, experience in counseling as may be prescribed. This is all it says. So the counseling can be
a psychological problem, and he is not willing to come for counseling. At least you can have a court order to make him come.
Sir, I mean, one thing, so far as counseling, if you're talking about emotional aspects, if you're talking about psychological aspects, unless there is a willingness on the part of the person to be counseled, nobody can counsel him. You know that Bhartruhari's prayer, Natu Murka Jara Chitta Maradayit. Okay, even Brahma cannot actually change his mind. So, if he has got a wooden mind, a court order will not say that you shall be counselled. He'll go and sit in front of the counsellor, and the counsellor will talk, and he will just be a...
let me due respect to you.
1 minute, I think he has a question.
No, one second. Let's complete this. Complete that, sir. One small request. If somebody is speaking, let that person complete it. Yeah. You are finished. Okay. Sorry.
Before he started, I have a question on what he said. Does this act cover only physical abuse and no mental harassment?
No. Why? I told you, no. I mean, it covers mental also. I mean, the whole thing about making a snide remark against a woman, anything which lowers her dignity, that also. Anyway, I mean, since I am the devil's advocate, let me be a little more devilish.
Thank you.
I am aware of one case where mother was handling the finances of her son. The girl reported to her mother. And naturally, mother-in-law doesn't like boy's mother to handle her finances. Both the boy and girl live in US, and the girl's mother files a dowry harassment case against the parents. Now the boy is so petrified, he has provided a separate home for the girl in US. He also lives in US, she also lives in US, but they live in separate homes. He doesn't visit her. He sends her money for maintenance. He says, I'll look after you monetarily, but then I'll not live in the same home. Now, something like this, please do not mistake me. I'm not voting against this act, because from this quarters I'm likely to be thrashed. Now, all that I'm trying to say is that any law like this is likely to have adverse impact also. Now,
in balance, what will it be?
Yeah, that's right. In balance, what will it be? To my mind, this is an area. I'm not talking about the beating part. Somebody is physically harmed, physically injured. Definitely, such a fellow has to go to jail. No doubt about it. Even Lauren Bobbitt has to go. No doubt about it. Whether it's man or woman who indulges in violence, they deserve to go to prison. No doubt about it. No second thoughts about it. But there are certain areas in which it is best left to the institution of marriage, and it is best left to the society, it is best left to the societal pressures, because you are trying to virtually draw up a contract, you are virtually trying to induct third-party agencies who can only complicate and cannot help the matter. Now, what this could also do is that borderline cases, out of fear, the husband might not want, because what Justice Rangarajan was mentioning a while ago, the objective is to make the marriage work, the objective is to ensure that the fellow calms down or the lady calms down and they come together and they live a happy married life. I mean, after all, what is it? In fact, one person wrote a very nice article about this and said they should have come out with a Domestic Harmony Act rather than come out with a Domestic Violence Act.
So the point is, marriage is a legal sanction of living together. So that legal sanction requires another legal act, like the domestic violence. We all
No,
need
I mean the
legalities to support it.
Hindu concept of marriage is not that it is just a legal relationship. I mean, it is a sacred relationship.
But you
But
said
I know,
society
but now
should
you
take
said
care of
marriage
it.
is not.
All these years, society has not taken care of the violence that is.
That's it.
And one more thing,
no,
but
it's
just very
social
clear.
pressure can coexist with the court system.
He still has a question.
Yeah.
Waiting.
So it's generally agreed that there are.
No question. Nobody agrees on anything.
No. Okay. The
I have
observation
your
is
point. I have mine.
the observation is that the law has been misused. So what is the lead? It has
No,
been.
law is misused, capable of misuse.
Right.
My primary concern is that more than helping the true victims, it is going to aid the unscrupulous elements.
My question is-
That's a concern which I've expressed.
My question is, what is the recourse to men who have been abused because of misuse of laws?
Yes, that's a very good question. In fact, I ought to have touched upon it. It's a very good question. You see, there is one provision in the Criminal Procedure Code which people don't use at all. Now, if anyone files a false complaint against you, okay, and after the dismissal of the complaint, a false complaint against you, you can file a complaint against the person who made a false complaint against you because it is an abuse of the process of the court. So the law provides for it. But in reality, I mean, I don't know of any convictions where anybody has been sentenced to prison term for abusing the law.
So, can there be something to, while that gentleman said that this has put a pressure on...
It's an extremely good point you're making. It's an extremely good point. I think at some point of time, you see, this is all a trial and error experience. This is a learning process. Now the Act is in its infancy. 498A has been on the statute book for quite some time, but then obviously attention has not been bestowed on this. In fact, if you look at it, it says that the person who gives a complaint shall not be subjected to any. I'll just show you that provision, or I'll look it up a little later and tell you. There is a provision which says that if anybody files a complaint, then nothing shall be held against that person for filing the complaint. But then it does not give immunity from filing a false complaint. But there is never any immunity from filing a false complaint. And probably the Act should prescribe, for instance, the tax laws. They contain many a times provisions where wrong claims are made. They are protected in the sense that any official act is protected. But the courts have held that this immunity from official act does not absolve them where they dishonestly or wrongfully apply a law for a collateral purpose or for a wrong purpose.
So the onus falls on the accused after he's not been after he's dismissed.
See, the very fact that the complaint is dismissed it strengthens that person's case because you know.
Sir, why it may not be perfect, so it is one step in the right direction.
No doubt. Without a doubt.
No, and also one more point. This doesn't cover only the married couples' violence in marriage or anything. In domestic violence, does it also give protection between two women?
Why not? I mean, if you're not you, if somebody's co-sister abuses, definitely it covers. For instance, you know, if they're living in a matrimony, let's say two brothers and their wives, okay, and the elder brother's wife abuses the younger brother's wife or vice versa, the Act gives them protection because that person can also be a respondent. And they're sharing a household by virtue of a matrimonial relationship, not necessarily between those two people, but otherwise.
Mother-in-law, daughter-in-law.
Pardon me?
Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law.
Yes.
Yes, mother-in-law, daughter, definitely.
Can this be misused where the daughter-in-law could be the respondent by the mother-in-law?
Yes, if daughter-in-law, let us say, physically abuses her mother-in-law, I mean, there is no.
Can this act be used also wrongly by the oppressor?
I didn't get your question.
The oppressor is the mother-in-law or
Correct.
the husband. Let's say the mother-in-law. And the mother-in-law uses this law to complain against the daughter-in-law.
There is no limit to human ingenuity. Lawyers will advise this.
Any law can be
No. Is there a mechanism as to the fact that it is the husband's side who can be the respondent, but cannot be the complainant?
No, I mean, but
cannot be the complainant.
One's own brother, one's own sister could be an accused in this case. One's own sister, in fact, one's own father or mother can also be accused because if she is staying with her parents.
No, my question is the victim always have to be the person who is married and come
Into the family, nothing
come
of
into
that
the family?
No.
That's my question.
No, nothing.
And her children? No.
Yeah, but that emanates out of my question is that can an employer-employee relationship inside a domestic?
No, I mean, it has to be by matrimony or a relationship in the nature of marriage or consanguinity. I mean, there is a brother-sister relationship has to be.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Will you narrate what?
Huh?
Would you like to narrate what you told me over phone?
And then finally, after that, I have the last say. One joke, that's all.
Oh, what a joke. I have discovered that the only way I can beat my wife is in a game of cricket. No, today I got a call in the afternoon, someone who's seen the advertisement, invite to the Times of India. This lady called me, actually I don't know how she managed, she got his mobile number and said that he could not get through to him. And she saw this number and called me and said that she is married to a person in the United States and that person is a green card holder and that person has cheated her out onto the green card. She and her children are living with her in-laws and the in-laws don't allow her to go out of the house. There's a lot of physical abuse and they constantly tail her and she was crying on the phone and she says that somebody would have already kept track of even this call but she's doing it under great pressure and she managed to get her neighbor's mobile phone and she somehow tried to contact us again when she goes out to some neutral place like a temple. That's the only place apparently she's allowed to go. And at that point in time she'll give an hour or two notice that she wants to contact somebody who will come and rescue her. I asked her, how do I know this is not a hoax? And actually she told me I'm crying and I'm an educated woman and this is not a hoax. But she told me. So apparently, from what I could see, the limited conversation I had with her, people are waiting for a helpline or an opportunity.
There is a helpline. Heritage has got a helpline for this.
No, there are quite a few. There is one agency called as Manushi. There is one agency called as Vimochan. There are quite a few of these organizations which have come up and cooperate helplines and give assistance.
I remember one case I did with charity.
Sir, please.
Actually, there was a case where there was a rickshaw fellow. There's a person was having a rickshaw, was earning his livelihood with a rickshaw. He got married, his wife was pregnant, and she had gone to her mother's house. And this fellow did not visit her at all. So one day she came back to him to complain about his not visiting her. Then there's some sort of a quarrel in the hut. And he took a knife and stabbed her in the stomach. Then he ran away, people chased him and he got caught. And she was admitted to the hospital. Fortunately, she survived, but the baby died. He was prosecuted. Then in the prosecution, he was convicted, of course. Then he filed an appeal. Appeal came before me. And he had no advocate for him. So I appointed some young fellow as an advocate. Then I asked him to argue with this. Then he started arguing, saying that he did not kill the baby, the doctor killed the baby. because he was not given proper treatment and the baby would have suffered, something like that. Then I said, it's all right, what does your client say? Then he said, I have not met my client. I said, you are supposed to go to the jail and meet him. Then the public prosecutor said, the chap is not in the jail, he's on bail. Then I said, it's worse because he's supposed to be present in the hearing and you should have brought him. So I adjourned the case, asked him to bring him. And the next hearing, he was brought with his wife and another baby. The case has taken 3 years to be.
They reconciled in a week's time.
They have reconciled and had a baby. And now that wife started crying, saying, to send my husband to jail, who will actually come?
But this only this only illustrates the point. I mean, we are an extremely resilient society.
Regardless of that, Ravi, the issue is that society has not taken care of the women. Not in all these centuries. Women still are the suffering lot. There is no question about that. Societal pressure, nothing has worked. Nothing has worked in all state of society. Women are the abused lot in our country. And if it were just a question of one more procedure, one more forum that is being adopted, is that what we are talking about? Or are we talking about a substantial relief being given to the victim in terms of something which would not have been available to her in the normal course of execution of other laws?
If you were to make a joint agreed statement here today, this is a step in proper direction. 1, 2, this is only tip of the iceberg. This is only tip of the iceberg. What it gives is grossly inadequate, and a lot of things have to be done. Is that a joint agreed statement, Dr. Gauri?
So what was the judgment in your case?
My judgment was he was already in jail for 6 months. I reduced the sentence to the sentence already.
Yeah.
Yes, still has a question.
All this time you had been telling women being harassed. What about men being harassed, sir? You have not told us anything about this. Could you please tell
This act doesn't say anything about it, but you have your remedies. I mean, please don't mistake me when I use the word you. When you are talking about a sensitive subject like this, you and I will become a little different. Anyway, the man can go to misuse.
Why I am telling you is, of late in the recent times, I had read in the newspapers some men trying to commit suicide.
Yes.
All those things.
Yes, I mean definitely. In fact, this is the point which I was making a while ago. It is likely, a statute like this is likely to put pressure on marriages also. Especially marriages.
How can that be? How can that? How can it go? How can a law put pressure on marriage?
You mean it forces us to be violent?
Come out of it. I mean, the same whatever.
It can't put pressure on.
You see, listen.
Biological husband is not likely to bother about the law.
That's why I said you complete it, then I'll give you an answer. You're not letting me give you an answer.
Go ahead.
See, it's not going to put pressure on a normal marriage. Okay? It is said, I mean, today, for instance, about 2 years back, I read some article how marriages amongst software professionals are not very happy marriages. They had interviewed a large number of people and they had come to the conclusion that they had a lot of problems with their marriages. The reason being, both of them are highly preoccupied in their professions. And they do not bestow the kind of time. I mean, after all, marriage is a relationship. I mean, it's like growing a plant, it's like growing a tree. I mean, you've got to grow it over a period of time. So you have to nurture that relationship. Now, when the partners do not have time to nurture that relationship and when the partners are under pressure, supposing the woman complains saying that, look, I mean, you're underperforming and it lowers my dignity. it's capable of abuse in that sense. So sensitive marriages, there could be pressure. The fear that something wrong is likely to happen. So in some sensitive marriages, there is bound to be pressure. I'm not. It's not going to happen in normal routine marriages. In some cases.
How many protection officers can there be in a state like Andhra Pradesh? How do these hundreds of thousands of women access these protection officers?
It's a very this is one of the wrong things that the Act does. They could have actually had NGOs doing this job. The protection officers could be.
NGOs is another industry.
No.
No, that's why I also thought.
Because if you have to go to one state government agency, I mean, most of the time there will not be even a child and welfare officer in that particular district.
No.
It's very unsatisfactory.
You have to have a protection officer. It's a state that can only help. That we can't. For the underprivileged, it's only the state that can help. Even if you say the protection officer is a terrible lesbian woman who beats up people.
No, but you can't trigger action into the act unless you go through the child protection officer.
That is probably a safeguard. They don't want the interface between the victim and the police. Perhaps this gentleman is an interface between them, and they go through it.
But then simultaneously, this appointing of this 500 protection officer must have happened.
It has happened. I believe there's a meeting tomorrow on this.
They started implementing in Andhra Pradesh from the 26th of October. That's what the
tomorrow
newspaper
there's
said.
this women's commission is having a big think of it and various things have been started.
Yeah, any more questions?
Just a general, I don't know, I want to know your general comment. Has it, I mean, maybe you can also, because you vocally very passionately said that. Do you think we are very, this is not legal, so don't quote me. Do you think
it's not illegal, right?
No, it is not. I'm not talking in terms of legal terms, but social terms. Are we really in such a bad shape today as in 40 years back where women are not being recognized?
It's not a question of recognition.
I mean, what I mean to say is, like, I hope you understand the question.
In fact, many a times it is this recognition in the society which is likely to create conflicts. I mean, after all, if there is violence, if you analyze the root, I mean, there must be some cause for it, some reason for it. Except a madman, nobody would go and beat the woman in the house. What are the reasons? The reasons are he has had a, most of the times it is induced by poverty. The fact that he cannot earn enough to provide for the family and provide for himself. Then in lower classes at least, they end up drinking heavily and using all the money. And in some cases, men get incapacitated, 35-40, labor class and all 35-40, many of the men are incapacitated. They can't do hard labor and they are unskilled people, they don't get jobs. They can't take up any jobs. Then frustrations in life, financial worries, but they incur debts and they're not able to do anything. So they need a vent for their anger. The easiest target is the woman. This is how it happens.
One more thing you forgot, because they can do it.
That's right. Obviously, obviously, I mean,
That's what I meant by social beating, because it is accepted that men can beat women.
No, I mean, it is a emotional vent. Now, to the extent that it says that you can no longer do it, or at least you couldn't do it earlier, but I am now saying that you can't do it any longer. To that extent, it helps. So, the root cause of all these problems, except in a small percentage of cases where the man may be mentally suffering from a mental aberration, in majority of the cases, these are the sort of reasons. Now, the fact that woman, I told you about this, the fact that the woman has more independence today, or the fact that she is recognized, that also leads to some degree of frustration in some men. You remember that old movie of what is that movie? The movie Abhiman. Oh, yes. that sort of situation. I mean, that also you know that movie, na? Where wife becomes a very successful. She becomes a very successful singer. The famous Jayabali, Amitabh Bachchan. So I mean, that could be one of the causes. There could be variety of reasons. So,
but is it more today than the past? Or is it equal, or is it less?
It may be less, but it is.
It is rampant. I mean, let's put it this way: it is rampant.
It is more than before because now women feel that they can fight and get away with it. Earlier they were not. They are more assertive.
Prabhupada, the percentage of women who can actually fight back is so small that you can ignore it. Right? Only we made them. Only we made them. That's all.
Looks apparently.
Very true.
Apparently it looks that.
No, but I don't think that's
because earlier they're not coming out. Or at least they're coming out.
Now it's known about.
That is why I said
we need a law like
that's a good.
it's not about law. I'm asking you about.
I came in late into
That's
this.
what I already
very high.
What I wish to ask you is, if a neighbor complains about domestic violence and the woman herself says, I don't wish to complain, then is there anything in
The
this?
person who can complain is the woman herself.
There's nothing yet where a neighbor can
The neighbor can always complain under you don't have to use the Domestic Violence Act, but you can make a complaint saying that because you see, so far as the criminal offences are concerned, the law is anybody can make a complaint. Anybody who is privy to any knowledge about any offence having been committed can always file a complaint. But you can't make a complaint under this act.
Under this
you,
act.
You can make a complaint under the Indian Penal Code.
Yeah. Yes, Amar.
You're not qualified.
If a man beats up a woman, and in return after a few days or while the man's sleeping, a woman beats up the same woman beats up the barricade, and then she goes and files a case against the man, can it still be?
It can still be investigated.
Prosecuted?
Doesn't cancel out, huh?
Two minuses don't make it a plus.
So, is there a likelihood for domestic violence against men? This is.
I mean, another act like this, gender.
Do you think it's possible?
Unlikely.
No.
I don't know how long this took to make.
No, but see, I mean, let us put it this way. I mean, centuries of experience has shown that man has not been as much a victim as woman has.
In fact, he has not been a victim. I mean, let's face it.
No, I mean, I think that I don't.
The
I'm
numbers
not.
are so small. The numbers are so small that they can be ignored.
So small.
No, I mean, you see, Ajay, we are talking
We have Indian Penal Code to help you there.
Subtle harassment. There is a lot of subtle harassment.
It is the same things, the provisions which Domestic Violence Act say, like humiliating.
Oh yes, you are right.
Those things are actually.
That's a very valid point. You see, I mean, supposing the woman says that you are impotent and you are a no good man. I mean, if the man says that, it becomes an offence. But this sort of gender bias is there. In fact, in the Criminal Procedure Code, the woman can complain against the husband for adultery. The husband cannot complain against the woman for adultery. So you do have these quirky things, in law. I mean, law is not necessarily everything right.
Thank you, friends. It was a wonderful evening of discussions. I think now we deserve a round of applause. I really enjoyed reading this. And frankly, I never knew this act existed. So I really enjoyed it, and we hope to have more such sessions. I must tell you that on January 3rd, we are having one more Manthan. Dr. Thomas is a leading neurologist, one of the top neurologists in the world. He's coming and he's speaking to us. We will tell
Where
you
is
the
he coming
topic.
from?
He's working in Cambridge, and actually he's now shifting to Australia. And
He's Polish. He's traveled extensively in India, and he's working now in Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
He's at Cambridge.
What is he going to talk on?
It's not decided yet, but
Why don't you make clear?
really.
Suvarna is the one who is getting Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, when I went to Cambridge and met him for the first time, he said, "Oh, you from one of those places that's closest to the only Saraswati temple in India." He said, "This person is Polish, and he's been in Cambridge all his life. He's a maverick. He's a lovely person. He's travelled extensively in India, very well informed about India and world in general. So he'll be visiting us. So I've asked him to talk to all of us on the European kind of view on India is well informed. He hasn't confirmed still what he's going to talk about, but it's surely going to be very interesting because he is a very interesting person. He speaks well too.
3rd January.
3rd January.
He has confirmed the date, right?
The date is confirmed.
Same time.
Same time we are meeting here. 3rd January we are meeting here again.
5:45.
He's preparing Telugu quotes and he learned Sanskrit before visiting India for the first time. He speaks so many languages. It will be interesting, yes.
Thanks, Sona. Before we end up, I request Geeta to give memento to Ravi.
Before the next step, this is just an example of what, with due apologies, what this actually meant. You see, there was this marriage between 2 lions, and all the lions were wearing the pagadi and dancing away literally. And there was a little rat also in the midst of them dancing away. Then one lion roared at that rat and said, "What the hell? I mean, what business do you have to come and dance in lion's wedding?" And he said, "Well, I was also a lion till I got married."
This is to the lion who roared.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, and we'll meet again on January 3rd.
Thank you for organizing this lovely discussion.
With coming.
Okay.
Traffic.